Hello, welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday, February 5th, 2020. And welcome to the MuseScore Café, as I said. My name is Marc Sabatella. I'm the Director of Education for MuseScore. And I'm just checking my sound here. Whoa, I think I'm checking my sound. Do I have sound? Okay. Um, Not hearing it on my other laptop here. So give me a sec. Comments. Sound? Yes? Okay. Robert says yes. Um, so something going on my other system, not sure what. Um, all right. So anyhow, my name is Marc Sabatella, Director of Education for MuseScore. This is my weekly series of chats. So uh, we I took the week off last week, as I mentioned, because I went to the FOSDEM conference, which is the Free Open Source Developers European Meeting. It's a conference of open source software developers in Brussels every year. Went last year, and it was a great experience. Went this year again, another great experience, and I actually gave a presentation along with Peter Jonas, another developer, talking about some of our accessibility work. And just overall, I want to talk about some of the things that happened at FOSDEM. A lot of it's of interest mostly to other developers, but some of the things that happened or that we talked about are of general interest. And I don't know, probably just knowing a little insight into the software developing process is potentially of some general interest. So, oh, now there's an echo. Really? Never mind. Okay, cool. Hey Arthur. By the way, enjoyed your video. That was really nice. I got to see that. I think while I was out there. Um, So Arthur has this really nice video. Go ahead and post the link in here to a kind of a tutorial on part preparation and things of that nature. Um, so, what am I doing? I want to talk about what happened at the conference. So let me give you just sort of a brief rundown. What happens? First of all, it's a conference of open source software developers, and so I don't know how many hundreds of people were there or thousands of people there, because it's not like a formal conference that you register for or anything like that. It's very much in this free open source kind of mentality. There's a university that just hosts it every year, every summer, or not every summer. They must be on break right now or something. I don't know. Because we just take over the school for a couple days. I guess it's the weekend. And so it's developers of other open source software. So those of you who are MuseScore users, I don't know if you use other open source software, but for instance, LibreOffice, which is like an alternative to Microsoft Word in the same way MuseScore is to Finale, they have people there, but also a lot of tools for other programmers, uh, a lot of uh, a lot of aspects of the World Wide Web, a lot of aspects of how the internet works are powered by open source software, and so there's a lot of people who work on a lot of just the technical underpinnings of stuff you use all the time without even thinking about it. So those are some of the kinds of people that are there. And last year we didn't have a booth of our own. This year we did, at least on Saturday. So the MuseScore team had a booth a table where you set up and you meet with users. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's back up. So we started arriving Thursday. Peter and I both arrived on Thursday, and then everyone else started arriving on Friday. Everyone else from the MuseScore team started arriving Friday, so we were all in by Friday night mostly, so that Saturday morning we could set up for the our booth, and then we spent all day Saturday meeting with people who come by the booth. And the attendees of this are mostly other developers, but it's open to the public, so plenty of other people who are just users of MuseScore might have come by just to see our booth, and we met with a lot of them. So we do have a photo album, and if I can get over to that here real quick, I can show you some show you some pictures. So here's our booth. Um, with some people coming by, and right at this particular moment, there's more of us developers. You can tell us by our MuseScore sweatshirts. Um, than there are other people there, but um, At other times there was like it was just crowds of people. This is well, you can't really see. This is Yo-Yo, Joachim. That's me. This is one of the newer developers, and he's one of the longtime contributors to the project. Um, this is Vasily, who's one of the newest contributors. Dimitri here, and I guess that's James Thistlewood, who did the single note dynamics, and these are some users. So yeah, there's just lots of pictures in here of miscellaneous things. I don't know how many of them are of general interest to everyone, but let me show you. We rented a place to stay, and there are pictures. Maybe I have to refresh to get them because I just uploaded some of my pictures. Um, so we spent the day there Saturday doing that, but then we went back to our apartments where we enjoyed dinner together. So these are all the same people. There's Peter Jonas, and then this is Yete Johan Temmerman. I think I got that right. This is David, who's a new manager in the MuseScore community at MuseScore.com, and this is Anatoly here, who's kind of the head of MuseScore, the MuseScore program development. And this here is Martin Curie, otherwise known as Tantacruel, who produced the videos and is now our kind of design lead. So I'll be talking a little bit more about him and his contributions. And then this is a picture of our presentation. There's Peter giving the presentation, and here's the room where the presentation is taking place. So anyhow, that's those are some pictures. I figured I would show those. All right, what am I doing? So at the booth, there were just tons of people coming by. Those pictures were at relatively calmer times, and there were other times where we're just bombarded with people, and it was an interesting mix of people. Some of the people coming up, because these are the conferences mostly other software developers, many of the people are just wandering around seeing what the other software developers are doing, and they have no idea what MuseScore is. So they walk up to the table and they're like, so what is MuseScore? And we spend a few minutes explaining what MuseScore is, and oh, that's really interesting. Some of the people coming up, though, were MuseScore users, either because, maybe they were open source software developers who happen to use MuseScore, or they came specifically for our booth. We definitely had some people specifically coming to the conference because they knew we were going to be there. So, of the people who came up to the booth, I would say the most common question was, what is MuseScore? Because there was an awful lot of people just, not knowing what it was. There was also, I would say, a fairly common question among people who either already knew what it was or didn't already know what it was, but weren't like really heavy users, who were not really sure about the distinction between like producing notated music versus the idea of being for performing music. Like a lot of people expected or were wondering if there was something where you could just play a MIDI keyboard and it would just notate it for you, which is a lovely goal in an artificial intelligence sense to try to figure that out. But the number of things there are to figure out. I mean, we have a limited real-time input facility. Hey, Colleen, good to see you too. And yeah, Arthur, definitely post in the link to your video. I will in a bit if you don't. But go ahead. Uh, yeah, a lot of people were curious about MIDI input, specifically, I think, because this is a conference full of like computer people who are probably more likely to be using MIDI keyboards than average type of person because they have all sorts of electronic gadgets and things. So that was a common question. But another common question was, how did you guys get Martin Curie to work for you? Because Martin Curie is semi-legendary under his handle Tantacruel, where he produces YouTube videos and does commentary on the design of various programs out there, mostly music-related programs. But he was the design lead. He worked for Microsoft for a number of years and helped design the Paint 3D program, for instance. And so he has become very well known in the software design world, user interface design. And when he posted this critique of MuseScore after having previously done one of Sibelius, we started implementing some of his suggestions and ultimately hired him, which I I told you about, I don't know, a few weeks ago. So Martin is responsible for some of the changes that have happened in MuseScore of late, such as the fact that you can now rearrange palettes as easy as that, and many other. Oops, I guess I can't drag above. Yes, I can. I just dragged too far. So the fact that rearranging palettes, or if you're like within the palette, I am never going to use that clef in my entire life. Bye bye, right? So I just hit delete and it's gone. So all sorts of improvements like that are because of Martin, and he's continuing to work on further improvements. One of the things he's working on right now is improvements to the inspector, but they're still kind of underway. So, but he's got some really big ideas for how we can really improve, like just so you're not so just bombarded with all this information, especially like when you select a note, there's all these different things there. So he's got some great ideas for improving that. One of the things that he was showing that he's working on the design for is, like, for instance, say you add a crescendo to your score, and you just because let me use the palette the way someone might be likely to do it. If you're using drag and drop, you might drag to the score, and it just adds it to the whole measure. But maybe that's not what you wanted. Maybe you only wanted it to be the first couple notes. Well, a common mistake people make is to click this thing. Oh, by the way, it used to be double click, but with MuseScore 3.4, it is now just single click. But a common mistake is just to try to drag things, and that's not really going to work. If you try to drag the end point of this, you can see the dotted line is telling you logically it's still attached to the end of the measure. And so those of you who are been around for a little while, let me select this thing and hit Control R to reset it. Those of you who have been around for a while know the right way to do this is use Shift plus left arrow. Now it actually changes where that thing is attached. That is not something anyone in their right mind would ever stumble upon, right? You have to read about that in the manual or be told that by someone else. So, oh, you can't add a link? Okay, well, I guess I can do that. So I will do that. So remind me, or I will remember myself. Let me see. Actually, let me just do that because why not? So if I don't actually know how to get to it, except to maybe do a search. How do I spell your name? You. Arthur Breyer. Let's see. That looks like the one, right? All right, I'm going to post that into the chat. 1 second. All right, so maybe it's a permissions thing. Oh man, can I edit that? No, let me try that again with your name spelled correctly. R. There we go. Okay. So, one of the things that we've long kind of wanted to be the case is that you could just drag this like people expect and have it snap from note to note. So Martin was working on the design for that, and actually, I think either Dmitry or Vasily have partially implemented this. So it's something, it's coming. We don't have any specific plans on when it's coming, but that seems kind of a no-brainer because it's just an improvement. It doesn't destroy anyone's workflow, really. I mean, if you really want to adjust the stretch of things, I think we're going to turn that into shift drag or something. I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but that's one of the changes coming, and so we got to see like a demonstration of that in action because the code is partially implemented. But some of the other things that were happening were just people were talking about things, and then someone said, "Oh, let me try to implement that really quick." So one of the little fixes that came along in the process of discussing there is, if I go here and I try to scroll this. Let me think. This isn't actually needing to be scrolled at the moment, is it? If I pick a text no, if I pick a dynamic, if I pick an actual dynamic marking, I think it'll need to be, oh, no, that one needed to be scrolled. So there's a scroll bar here. And if I start to try to scroll, oh no, what happened? I'm using the mouse wheel right now, and look what's happening. It's actually changing the value of this field because I happen to put my mouse right there when I started scrolling, and it's misinterpreting my scroll action. I really meant to scroll the scroll bar here, but it's scrolling this value here. No one likes that behavior. So I believe James implemented a fix for that while we were there and submitted a pull request for it. So that'll probably be in some upcoming update. So things like that happen. We're just talking, someone mentions something that's a little annoying to them and someone works on it. Another one is this. If there's a dynamic marking on this note, and I decide, you know what, I don't really want pianissimo, I want mezzo piano. The way I have to do that right now is actually delete it. Oops, I need to hit the delete button on this. I need to hit delete and then re-add the marking. But wouldn't it be nice if while the marking was selected, you could just click in the palette and it would just change this into whatever you wanted? So that was discussed, and I mentioned that I thought it'd be really easy to do, and so I partially implemented it, but it didn't quite work for playback, and I'll worry about that later. But these are the kinds of things we do just during, during the off hours when we have, like while we were waiting for dinner or while we were after dinner, just sort of hung out talking about things like that. And then trying to do them. So brainstorming and kind of collaborating. So it was really a lot of fun kind of meeting with these people. Most of these people I had met before. Dimitri I had never met, and Vasily is new, so I definitely never met him. And Martin I had never met. I think pretty much most of the other. Oh, James. I never met James Thistlewood either. Everyone else I think I met last year or I had met somewhere else. Um, so those were some of the things that we did while we were there. Um, and then, so we had that booth, and I mentioned people coming by. A real common question again was, how did you get Martin to work for you? And really, I think it was just we liked his ideas and we started implementing them, and that caught his attention. And he said, "Well, I've got some more ideas. I could, maybe we could do a contract thing. I don't know who proposed it or what happened, but next thing you know, he's working for us. So there you go. So we'll be having more improvements in the user interface kind of area due to him. So on Sunday, we did not have our booth. The booth was just on Saturday because it was like shared. The same table was then someone else's table. But Sunday is when Peter and I gave our presentation. So I showed you a couple pictures of that. I'm actually going to show you just a minute of the video because I do have it here. So why not? So this is Peter talking about. So the presentation was on the work we did to make MuseScore accessible to the blind, which you've heard me talk about many times, and you've heard me demonstrate a couple things about it. But now I'm going to just run this video for a couple minutes so you can hear Peter talk about the palettes and hear me talk about the score a little bit.
So on the left here, you can see what the palettes would look like in terms of tabbable objects. If each was reached with the tab key, then it would take 50 presses of the tab key to get from the search box at the top all the way through all of the items in the palettes and back to the top again. But if we make use of the arrow keys as well, then what we can do is we can combine the whole tree area as just...
I'm going to pause this for a second because I just realized my face is covering up Peter's face. So, and the presentation itself. So I'm just going to switch to full screen for a second. Sorry for making people dizzy here. But there, that'll be better.
One tabbable object. So now it's just 4 presses of the tab key to get to do a complete circuit, and while you're in the tree you can use the arrow keys to navigate. So you can make things much, improve the experience for blind users and keyboard users using that method. And now Mark's going to talk about the score view.
So the score view is the view of the score itself, and here's where we really had to think outside the box of how to do things. So we want it to be keyboard navigable, but we also need to have screen reader feedback. So the basic model we knew we wanted is if the score view is showing you a particular note is selected and you hit a cursor key, like the right cursor key, it would move the focus to the next note, and hopefully the screen reader would read. And
Note C I cross it leads to.
there you go. I have it set on UK English. That's why I said crotchet instead of quarter. All right. So the navigation model, we can like use a text-based model for this to some extent. I mean, text is linear. Music is at least somewhat linear. So we can have characters in text kind of mapped to notes in music. Words, where you'd use control left or right to navigate by text, that's a measure or a bar in music. And then lines of text, we can compare those to staves in music, but it's unfortunately not quite that simple. Like for piano music, this is piano music, there's two staves here in parallel, one for the left hand, one for the right hand. There's nothing linear about that. They happen at the same time. And even within a single staff, there's multiple notes happening at the same time. And there's other symbols that are sort of outside of that flow, like this symbol here is spanning several notes. So somehow you have to come up with a way of linearizing that so that people can understand how to navigate it. And so what we ended up doing was coming up with a set of commands that just do exactly that. They linearize this so that as you move through it, it'll know I'm going to go from this note, to this rest, to this symbol, to that note, to this, and then back here in a very standardized way in which you can learn to read the score that way. It's not dissimilar to how Braille might linearize it. So
there you go. So that was an excerpt from the talk. Most of it was rather more technical than that. I mean, that's, slightly technical, but talking about the user experience. Some of it was more talking about the challenges of programming it. It was extremely well received. I would say that people there were really complimentary and were like, wow, that was, that we got some great feedback. So I want to thank Peter for really getting the ball rolling on setting that up and making that talk happen and inviting me to participate. And it was really, really great and rewarding. So other than that, I mean, I got there earlier and got there late, so I got to do a little bit of, sightseeing and so forth. Some people really just didn't have time for that and came in and came out. A lot of people live not as far away. Some of them were in Germany and just, actually everyone took a train. No one else flew. I was the only one far enough away to fly. Actually, long story, but the Anatoly, Dmitry, Vasily coming in from Russia were originally going to fly but ended up driving. So everyone else who attended either took a train because they're in Europe or they drove, and I was actually the only one to fly in. So I made a little longer trip of it. So that is basically what happened there, and it's just really a wonderful team building experience also to be able to participate in that. So I'm disappointed. I'm now kicking myself for not having ever gone to one of these before, before last year anyhow. But whatever, it's not too late to be starting now. So I don't know. That's what I've been up to for the last week, and I'm now just getting back into catching up and getting back into the normal swing of life. I need to wrap up some of the accessibility work. Oh yes, I am continually coming back to that subject because I spend a lot of time dealing with it. One of the things that I want to tell you is while we were working on the presentation, someone who is a blind musician started using MuseScore and decided to post to the MuseScore forum and kind of offer to help us with accessibility a little bit. A guy named Pete, who turns out to live in Golden. Well, okay. Okay. So, okay. Done. All right. Let me just get my face back in here because why not? When you have the screen reader on, it talks a lot. All right. So when we originally implemented all the accessibility features, it only worked on Windows and only worked with a particular screen reader called NVDA, which is a free and open source screen reader, so that's great, but it's actually not the most popular one. The most popular one is JAWS, which is expensive, but it's what most people use. To be honest, I don't know that it's actually any better than NVDA, just like I can't really tell you that Finale or Sibelius are so much better than MuseScore that there's really a good reason for most people to ever use Finale or Sibelius, but whatever, they do. So similarly, I think JAWS a lot of people use. It's definitely more popular than NVDA. And so it's always bothered us that we haven't been able to get NVDA to work. So Pete is a developer who works on helping people get NVDA to work with their applications by writing scripts within JAWS. And so he wanted to help us write some scripts to get this working. And it was during last month while I was also working on that presentation. And then, after I've been corresponding with him for a few days, realized that he lives, as I started to say, in Golden, Colorado, which is, I'm in Denver, or Arvada, actually, West Denver. He's all of like 10 miles away from me, I think. So I got to meet with him in person, and he showed me a few things. I showed him a few things. And the bottom line is, JAWS, with these scripts,
Split button untitled. Dynamic MP beat 1. Treble clef measure 1 beat 1.
all right, so you heard it read treble clef. It still read what was selected before. When I hit all right,
Time signature 4/4 time beat 1. Note C5 quarter beat 1.
I just
Hairpin crescendo start measure 1 start beat 1 end measure 1 end beat 2.
right,
Note D5 quarter measure 1 beat 2 end of hairpin crescendo.
there you go. So anyhow, JAWS is now working with the aid of these scripts. So this was something that we had sort of put on the shelf years ago when we first got the screen reader working, but now we have it working. I need to, put these scripts somewhere where they can be downloaded. But we're really quite excited by that. And at the same time, I also got it working with the Orca screen reader. It's kind of a pun name. JAWS is, a shark, and Jaws is a movie about a shark. Orca is a term for killer whale, it's killer whale is a term for orca. Orca is the more technical term. So Orca is the screen reader that runs on Linux, and so similarly, it didn't work by default. We didn't know how, but once I started writing this JAWS script, I realized we could also write an Orca script to do the same things to get it to read. So we now also have that working. And I've been working with the developer of Orca, or one of the developers of Orca, to try to eliminate the need for this script, to see if we can make some improvements in how we do things and in Orca itself to try to eliminate the need for that script. But so in the last month, we actually made, in the course of putting that presentation together, we managed to make some like really incredible progress on the accessibility front. So we're really pleased about that. So yeah, I need to wrap up that work and get those scripts online. And then my next project, personally, is returning to this music theory course that I've been developing. I had talked about that some over the past few months, and I had created all these teaching materials, handouts, and worksheets that I used while I was teaching this theory course at a university last semester. So I've got those all online. Next, I need to record some videos for the course to because teaching the course at the university, I just gave the lectures in person, but now I'm going to record them as videos. And then so I'm going to have this theory course. It's a really basic theory course. It's not like really intense. It's really just teaching you the basics of music notation and scales and triads is about it. But then, so I plan to spend this month getting those together, and then we'll have this theory course for you, and it's geared towards MuseScore users, and so I'll use MuseScore to produce the worksheets are all produced in MuseScore, and they're interactive. You can play them back in MuseScore and all. So that's going to be something I'm going to be really excited to have available soon. And then I'm going to work on a more advanced one that really deals in some of the topics that you've seen me talk about in these cafes, like the one I did on counterpoint, where I talked about species counterpoint, or sometimes I've talked about harmony and reharmonization and so forth. So I'm really looking forward to coming up with producing a more advanced theory course. So that's kind of where I'm going to be turning some of my attention over the next few weeks. So you'll probably see me doing some cafes coming up on topics relating to that again. So I think that's what I have to tell you about right now. I'm not seeing any questions there. I still see that I'm broadcasting, so feel free to ask me some questions if you like about anything at all. And we'll hang out here for a few more minutes. But then I think I'm gonna to start getting back to as I said, the kind of clean. I still got to finish unpacking and so forth, because I got back really late, went Monday night, and then was teaching all day yesterday. So I'm still working on getting back settled. MuseScore 3.4 came out when, like 2 weeks ago, and right after it came out, we discovered some bug that needed fixing, and that became 3.4.1. Shortly after that, we discovered a couple of other bugs that need fixing. They were gonna be, well, they will become 3.4.2, and we had a notion that we were going to actually release 3.4.2 from FOSDEM. Um, while because the I mentioned that the Anatoly and Dmitry were going to be coming in, and Vasily were going to be coming in from Russia, and they were going to be flying in, and they were going to have the day Friday free, where they would be able to like get that 3.4.2 posted. But the when it ended up that they drove instead of flying, that time disappeared, so they did not end up having time for it. So I think you will probably expect to see that release maybe tomorrow. But 3.4.2 fixes all of the bugs that have been found that were new bugs introduced in 3.4. And there weren't that many, but there were some pretty annoying ones. Like all right, let me kill Jaws. There's a shortcut for. Oh wait a minute, it's caps lock F4.
Unloading JAWS. Quit JAW enter.
Here we go.
Split button untitled. Triple clef beat 1.
Okay, I think it's done. All right, so lost my train of thought. I'm good at losing my train of thought. Oh, so 3.4.2 will be coming out soon, but here's a fun little bug for you, and it has to do with accessibility a little bit. I implemented a command, Shift L, and what Shift L does is, like right now, if I have like a note selected and then I have this F selected there, and then I hit Escape, nothing is selected now. And if you're a blind user, well, now nothing is selected. You can't get anywhere because you would need a mouse to click something. So I wanted a shortcut that would reselect the last thing selected, and it's Shift L. So Shift L reselects that last note. Well, that's all well and good, but unfortunately, if you're typing, like, my favorite song to use for an example, Mary had a little, what happened to the L? Lamb. The capital L disappears from the text while you're typing it because I implemented this command that uses Shift L, and I wasn't smart enough, or didn't have enough foresight. I'm smart enough. I didn't have the foresight to realize, oh, I'd better make that command not be active while you're typing text. So while I was typing text and I tried to type a capital L, it was trying to select that F for me, and it just didn't do anything. So there you go. So these bugs happen. So anyhow, that bug is fixed. I actually fixed that bug at the Frankfurt airport on my way to FOSDEM. So there's a handful of other little bugs like that got introduced when we released 3.4. So 3.4.1 is perfectly useful right now as long as you don't need a capital L. And if there's another issue with entry of drum notes that's a little more concerning. But so these will be fixed. 3.4.2 will come out probably later today or tomorrow. So, and then at that point, so we have not been getting many other bug reports. We just keep getting the one about drums over and over again. So we know we need to get that fixed. So yeah, as far as what's next for MuseScore, there will be a MuseScore 3.5, and hopefully it's going to incorporate some more of Martin's changes, and hopefully maybe some of the Google Summer of Code stuff, like you saw me demonstrate the chord symbol playback last summer. Hopefully that makes it into MuseScore 3.5. So that's all stuff that's coming up. All right, and since I am not seeing any further questions, I think I am just going to sign off and wish everyone a good week. And as always, feel free to leave comments, drop me email, Marc with a C at musescore.com, with suggestions for future Café topics. I've got like a couple spinning around in my head that have been suggested in the past that I haven't quite gotten to. So one talking about playback and customization of playback, optimization of playback. One talking about note spacing and how to improve that some. And I've got someone who participates in these occasionally who's working on maybe improving the spacing of notes. So yeah, lots of things to talk about in future cafes. But I'm always up for suggestions of what you want to hear about. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, and I will see you next week. Bye.